Hello, welcome to Move Better, Feel Better, the Feldenkrais Awareness Summit. This is, of course, Cynthia Allen, and I'm so thrilled here today to bring with us Gil Hedley. He holds a doctorate in theological ethics from the Divinity School of the University of Chicago. He's a certified Rolfer, and what we know him for is he's an anatomist, and in particularly known for his integral approach and a couple of interesting catchphrases like somonauts and what the fuzz. But even if he outlives those, beyond that, he also has published a number of books and online courses. He's a poet, he's a philosopher, and a lover not just of the human body, but of the human experience. So glad to have you here, Gil.
Happy to be here. I'm no longer a certified Rolfer, though, so don't get me in trouble with the Rolf Institute.
Oh, okay. So sorry about that.
I did certify as a
You did
Rolfer.
certify as a Rolfer, yes.
My certification is long expired, as well as my skill.
Yeah, I bet your skill is a little bit different now with the body.
Very different.
Yeah, so I am interested, though, in how you went from theology to Rolfing to anatomy.
Well, I always was interested in the body, even as a young person. My sport in high school was bodybuilding. I was growing up in the 70s in the era of Pain Means Gain, and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu and Lou Ferrigno and Frank Zane were my heroes. So I was learning my anatomy on the fly, just watching it grow on my body as I pumped iron. But I didn't have so much time for that when I became a college student and then a graduate student. And I picked up Tai Chi in graduate school, and that kind of reintroduced me to my body from a different style of physical experience and embodiment. And I really pursued the Tai Chi as a way of finding my way into my body, because graduate school really drives you out of it. With full consciousness, like, don't be in there. We're living in a realm above our body, really. We're out of body in the meta zones of graduate school at the University of Chicago. So I lived there and found it to be a heady place and wanted to get into my body. But also, I didn't really want to be a professor. So my mother got Rolfed, and I saw and felt the changes in her body. I used to do Tai Chi massages on my mom on vacations, and the transformation was so amazing that I thought, I gotta learn about that. So I looked up Ida Rolf and saw that she was a PhD. I could relate to that. I saw that she was a healer and an educator. I thought those were noble pursuits. So I was really attracted to Ida Rolf as a person. And looked into Rolfing based on those experiences. So I kind of did my anatomy and preparatory trainings for the Rolf Institute while getting my PhD. So I did them simultaneously, and all my professors thought this was very odd that Hedley was massaging. Like, what is this all about? As they chain smoked and coffee drank their way into their next epic academic work. And I just found that my desire wasn't so much to study ethics and be a professor of ethics. I was more interested in being a good person. And I also saw that was part of Ida Rolf's intent, was to kind of grow and mature the human being. And it seemed to me that by becoming a Rolfer, I would be sort of forced to improve myself as a person in order to accomplish my professional discipline well. And so I really did enjoy that demand on me to grow as a person. And immediately after my Rolfing training, I started in on a 5-year journey with an energetic healing school. And while I was doing that, I started teaching anatomy for the school, just because I knew something and they didn't know anything. So it was welcomed by my peers there that I would hold little classes based on what I was learning in the lab. Because I started with, I went into the lab because I was a Rolfer, and I was thinking, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'm noodling around in people's bodies very deeply, but I don't know that I really know what's in there. I need, I know it from a book, but I don't know it for real. So I wanted to go into the lab to improve myself as a Rolfer. And when I got in there, I realized, oh my gosh, this is a universe that I need to. I am compelled by. I was compelled by the mysteries of human form revealed in the laboratory to study it more and more deeply until I set my Rolfing practice aside so that I could be a full-time somanaut.
Yeah. Yeah. And somanaut actually is a word that you have given to us that I mean, so many of us have appreciated the dimensions of that word. And it's like the dimensions of your work. You definitely are not what we think of as the typical anatomist. So, you know, as you've built these connections for us about how you came to it, you've also come up with this topic title for us, which was Integral Anatomy, Textual Layers, Continuity, and Relationship.
Hmm.
Relationship.
Yeah. Well, when I started in the lab, my first attempts, I had no reference points other than what little background I had from my Rolfing training. And that was important because it gave me a sense of that there were layers and textures that I could palpate with my hands, and we had names for them. You know, we did exercises to try and feel them in our training, and but all I had as a resource when I went into the lab was Grant's atlas, you know, Grant's dissection atlas, and it was so different, and the things that it told me to do to the body struck me as alien and disconcerting relative to my sense of the whole. And so it wasn't long into my work in the lab that I was thinking, I can't bring people into an experience that's so philosophically incoherent with what we've learned in our trainings, you know, teaching massage therapists and Rolfers and various hands-on practitioners anatomy in the lab from a chopped up perspective just didn't work for me. I couldn't do it. So I thought, can I, you know, dissect the body by texture? Can I follow the continuities and ignore the regions? Who needs regions? I'm not a surgeon. I'm a Rolfer. I'm a massage therapist. I cross regions every moment that I'm touching a person. I don't even really believe in them. It's just a mental construct. And really, you know, layers are a mental construct too, but it's a mental construct that sort of fits our approach better. And if we extend the phrase to say textural layers, well, that's literally something I can get my hands on, and I can dissect the body by textural layers as a road in to the whole, because it's really the whole that we're trying to reveal. So the whole point of integral anatomy is not to chop everything up into bits and name the bits. It's rather to find a way into an experience of the whole, into an experience of the continuities, into exploration of the relationship, so that every touch of my scalpel to the body is an opportunity to feel the connections as I disconnect them. So how much energy does it take me to take these two different textures and yield them apart? So that you know, that emphasis on texture, for one, connects up with the body worker's sense that they have in their hands, and feel these things in the living or the dead. But also, even with a scalpel, I have learned to use it as a tool to feel texture. How much energy, you know, do I have to put in? Can I separate something with my finger? Is it effortful or is it easy? The basic conclusion is that it's all connected, and that sounds almost trite when you say it. From an intellectual standpoint, it is trite, but when you actually experience the wholeness of the body, it's not trite at all. It's a revelation. The truth of connection that the body demonstrates. It's a complete continuity. And then for exploring that continuity in the body and witnessing the quality of connection, then you have a much more refined capacity to touch, to move, and to perceive the other connections around us that you might miss.
Yeah, so as you're exploring and you're feeling the differences between the connective, um, well, I don't know, maybe tenacity or
Hmm.
a lot of willingness to let go of connection compared to not willing at all. This is also telling you something about the whole, the way the whole is constructed, the way the whole comes together.
Absolutely, absolutely. So mhm, one thing I like to use as an illustration of, say, the difference between regional and integral anatomy is just the concept of a muscle. So a muscle in regional anatomy is, a very abstract construct where we say that's erectus femoris, or that's gracilis, or that's the biceps brachii. When you come to the tissue of the human body, it's just like a mass. And if we go to the flashcards of regional anatomy and we're getting ready for our test, we're going to want to memorize the origins and the insertions because that's where a muscle is attached, we believe, based on the test. The test is asking us and placing an emphasis on certain relationships of the tissue, so we figure that's what they are. When you go to the body and you see that every surface of the tissue is connected, there's no space, there's no point where it's not connected. It's connected over 100% of every surface. So you end up with a different question. It's not where is it attached, but what is the quality of the relationship in this place or in this place when it meets the bone? What's the quality and texture of the relationship when it's in relationship to the brachialis underneath the biceps brachii? What's the quality of the relationship there? Oh, it's filmy, it's slippery. It's a slippery kind of continuity that you can easily differentiate, and that tells you something about the mechanics, the movement. That movement is happening there whenever you find those filmy connections and slippery connections. We're like, oh, that's where we have differential movement in the body. And when we find the tendinous relationships or things built into the fascia or built into a septum, then we're like, oh, that's leverage. So that's leverage rather than differential movement. It's a totally different kind of quality of relationship. And I love dissection because it allows me to build up an inventory, of the qualities of a relationship that then can serve in my perception of movement or movement dysfunction or um, or how to approach touching that area, based on the quality of the texture that lives there. And if I have enough of an inventory of qualities of relationship, then I won't be messing with things that belong there, right? Or right. So you think, oh, that's really tough. That can't belong there, but it does. That's how it's built. That's okay. There's a lot of tension there. Oh, good. That's holding me together. It's not like all tension is bad.
Hmm. So, as someone who came through the pathway of Rolfing, of course, we know that Rolfers are particularly interested in fascia. And it's certainly not all you're interested in. I think that also would be a misnomer. But fascia is a mechanism or a means that you would work through as a Rolfer. So it makes sense to me that you would maybe come into your anatomy experience with an interest in understanding fascia from this other perspective. And where did that take you in terms of fascia?
Mm. Well, it is true that as a rolfer, I was taught that I was touching fascia, that I was working fascia, that fascia was a plastic medium, and that if I could introduce the right kind of pressure and heat, I could transform it like a magician, kind of. And so that's just a marvelous thing to think I have this power to transform tissues with my hands. And we consequently leaned in pretty hard in the effort and belief that, with enough pressure, we could kind of, turn it into, induce the thixotropic effect and create a different shape for a person that might facilitate their movement better. What I found was there was a whole lot more fascia than I knew, for one, that had many different textures and movement properties, for two, and that I wasn't so sure that, you know, what I was doing was what I was told I was doing, you know, and that it was a whole lot more complicated. But models are valuable when they simplify things. They give us a task, and even if the imagery isn't quite accurate, you know, we can still do people plenty of good. So you can have the wrong story about the right technique and do a lot of good service. But sometimes the story influences the quality of your touch. And so if I think that, you know, it takes a lot of pressure to induce that effect, then might be more heavy-handed than I need to be to actually create a change in the tissue that's actually happening by completely different phenomenon than I believe they were happening. So sometimes the story can get in your way, and you want to be, I like to say, hold on to your good practices dearly and your theories very lightly, you know. So if we're willing to let go of our stories and let the body actually inform us rather than us telling it a thing or two, if we let the body teach us something, which is what I've found has been the thrill of doing the dissection, is letting the body teach me about itself rather than me just going in to, you know, prove the history of anatomy true. Well, it's not, you know, so the body has other things to say about it, including there's more than one kind of fascia, and they respond differently to our touch. And the ones we think we're working on, we might not be working on. We might be working on other ones that we didn't even know were there. And that helped me to sort of shift my story around maybe what Rolfers do as opposed to what they think they do.
See, I think there's something you said there that's so significant, is that your style was not to go in and prove the theory of anatomy, but to go in, and I'm not sure how you said it, but to go in and basically, as an explorer, discover what was really there.
Yeah, a little bit of beginner's mind.
Really.
You know,
And
and this
that's,
comes to my ethics stuff too. You know, because as an ethicist, I was put off, you know, in my studies at the degree to which ethicists and moralizers, you know, sort of pontificate about the body, tell it what it should be without any knowledge of it at all. And I thought, that's just not right. We have to actually, if you want to do ethics of the body, you have to listen to the body. You have to understand the body. How would it inform our way of being in the world? If we weren't saying, do this, don't do that with regard to our bodies, what does biology have to say? Isn't biology a gift? You know, isn't this body a gift? Is there anything that's wrong with it? I don't think so. It's a gift. It's perfect as it is. And so I want to learn from it. You know, I want to be informed, and that goes for whether I'm a ethicist or a body worker. You know, if I don't want to be a bully as a body worker, telling the body where it should be and what it ought to do. I'd rather understand the variations and the complexity and the sophisticated intelligence of the body, so that maybe the job is not to keep telling the body, be this way, be that way, but to listen to what it's trying to say to you, being exactly as it is. Maybe it's our way of being with our bodies that needs to change more than our bodies.
yeah. So, I mean, if you think about our theme, which is move better, feel better, I think goes way beyond ethicists and people who work with bodies, or Feldenkrais practitioners who work with movement. It goes to the individual. So,
Mm,
like, as an individual, you're saying something very significant about what it means to move better and feel better, and it has something to do with not being attached to some outside abstract notion of what each of us is supposed to move like or feel like or be like.
absolutely. This is one of the, if there was a central uh, starting point for integral anatomy, it would be with one real body, right? not an average or a mean as a reference point for myself. Because when I look into the mirror of an anatomy book and see an image that's the average of 1,000 livers or 1,000 hands, that's no body.
Mm.
I can only find nobody in that book. And I never measure up if I'm looking at the mean. It's mean to never measure up. So the mirror, you know, is one another. And what we see is variation. Constant, beautiful, amazing, strange variation. And whatever theme our media has chosen for the decade as to what's a proper sized hip or breast or ass, whatever whatever we're being told this decade is the right one, then that becomes the mean girls, the mean approach to what we should look like, or the mean boys. So when I look at the table, I've never seen a cadaver that got it wrong. You know, in other words, that's a perfect, 100% perfect example of human anatomy. And it's shifted my perspective on what a human body is. I used to think the human body was my body, like this is a human body. And now I think that my body is the human body writ large, to include all the different examples that are all legitimate interpretations of the theme, and that actually all speak to a kind of expression of humanity that compiled together is the legitimate whole, as opposed to even this single wondrous example. But once you shift your mind state a little bit, or the thought frame around what a body is, and then it becomes a little easier to accept my body or your body. Your body isn't too big or too small, or it's just your body. That's so countercultural. I don't know what to tell you. You know.
Well, it is countercultural, and at first I was going to say it's a very compassionate approach, but that's not correct. I mean, it's compassionate sort of implies that there was a reason to be compassionate in the first place. There is no reason to be compassionate. It is what it is, which is each person, you're saying is each person is uniquely just right, just okay.
It's absolutely true. And the individuality isn't just the face or the external shape. It drills right on down to the bones, you know. There's no textural layer that isn't demonstrating your version of the human body uniquely.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, and it doesn't make you special. So
Right.
it just makes you human. And that's a wonderful thing. And when we can see the body, our own body, and if I can see your body as your gift, and this one is my gift, I don't really even believe that, to tell you the truth, because there's a connection, you know, between our bodies, and we're all sort of working from the same, we're all stuck on the same planet. We fall asleep when the sun goes down, and we wake up when the sun goes up. The sun, our master gland, is governing the great human body all across the planet that falls asleep and wakes up as the earth spins around the sun, right? And there's a certain, our bodies are pulled by the tides of the oceans and the moon. We share our organs, is what I'm trying to say. You know, we share these great celestial organs that are absolutely impactful on our physiology. They're biologically active, our relationships to the earth. When we cut off our relationship to the earth, we get inflamed. Our bodies suffer when we don't ever walk on the ground barefoot. We suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we're isolated from the sun, we suffer. They're biologically active phenomena. We get depressed. We act differently towards each other. That's why I live in Florida. I'm a sunshine guy.
Well, I'd like to go somewhere else in a minute, so I feel like this would be a great place. Would you mind reading us one of your poems? And then we'll kind of travel
Sure.
from there.
A poem. Let's see. Better get my glasses on. Let's see. How about this one? This is a metaphor. Your body is a holy book, scripture. The pages of your flesh are marked in exquisite detail with the finest hand, inscribed by spirit with the poetry of love, lessons of mercy, miracles, angelic hosts, and the story of your life perfectly told. An illuminated manuscript of sacred writing, epic in scope, majesty, and grace. Every hair on your head and line on your face, every rushing tide of wind and wave moving you from within this living testament bears witness to the truth layered within you. Study this text with conviction then. Reflect with care upon its meaning and enjoy the divine inspiration.
Mm. Your style is a combination of highly sensual, highly spiritual, highly connected. It all seems to go against what my experience of pathologists, which is I don't have experience with anatomists, but I have a lot of experience with pathologists coming from a healthcare background and laboratory background. And I think, when you say these words, inscribed by spirit, you're really you're giving us a sense of how you see, and when you talk about the sun, how you see this all going beyond human nature to sort of the whole of the experience of this organic experience. So where do you take this when you talk about continuity and relationship? When we go outside the body, even outside maybe our relationship to the sun, where else does this take you?
Well, you're theming on movement. How do I move in community? What is the impact of the social structure or the family or the religion on how I move? What's the impact of it on my physiology? As a pious Catholic in my youth, I moved in a very restricted way. I kind of threw all my energy out to the side of my legs rather than letting it run up the middle where I might feel something. I tucked my pelvis. My hips didn't move. My back was like a broomstick. And my eyes, I kind of put them about 6 feet on the ground in front of me so that I wouldn't sin by the concupiscence of the eyes, right? The strictures that I placed on myself from that way of being in the world were incredible and painful. It hurt. It hurt to be me in my body being that way. I got a lot of help at the Rolf Institute. Just movement cues like, Gil, would you consider like looking up at the horizon? It was a very powerful experience for me to realize I was doing that. I was choosing to look at the ground rather than look at the people around me for fear of whatever. Or my home environment could be a little tense at times. As a kid, my stomach was so typically tight that I would have my friends punch me for fun, like to show off. You know, but what does that say about the quality of my breathing for all those years, right? When you hold on like dumbbells to your chest and keep it from going up and down because you're in constant state of tension. So, or we don't move like this, do we? You know, because we'd get put away. You know, you can't even do stuff like this with your hands because, you know, it's crazy or something, right? But it's good for your nervous system actually. To
Actually, it does
really
feel kind of
like,
good. It'll change for a
I
change.
learned that from Emily Conrad. Just like do weird stuff, or Don Van Vliet. I learned from these people that you could really like change it up a bit, and but because that completely regenerates your potential for movement when you find your way into just weird little things like what can your finger actually do, and you can basically melt, literally, restore the slipperiness of the unused tissues in your body, because the limit cycles of family and society and religion and relationships and social structures, etc., the limit cycles of those on your movement ultimately play out through in your physical body such that some tissues are used more often than others, literally. The ones that are in a state of disuse from the mechanical repetitive motion of our lives, that lead certain tissues to fall into disuse, and they kind of also become maybe more static and lose their differential movement potential. And the movements that we use all the time, well, we maintain the slipperiness for turning the doorknobs and cutting a carrot or something like that. But other things, we use it or lose it. We lose it. And so when you start to explore movement, you break down social structures, you break down your religion, you break down your belief systems. If you really want to go there and explore movement, it's a disruptive force.
That's
Because
a
you're
great
literally
statement.
moving against the grain. And in order to, you want to get a river to flow, you know, how do you get it to flow somewhere else? You have to put a rock into it. You have to perturb it. You have to disrupt patterns. Now, some of our patterns are very useful, and I would never, I'm the last guy to tell you to decompensate somebody by taking them into movement patterns that may be of service to them. You got to be careful with that. I actually did find that my Rolfing series actually kind of overly disrupted my my compensations in such a way that I basically fell apart, and got a little more Rolfing and fell apart again. And when I did finally get to my practitioner training with Robert Schleip, who was Feldenkrais trained, he actually said, you know, oh, we're not going to do that to you again. And he basically coached my partner in a sort of a 10 Feldenkrais sessions, I think. I don't think I ever got Rolfed again. Because what I really needed was a more gentle, integrative kind of thing from the get-go, because my personal body structure, scoliosis, blah, 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 just didn't hold up too well to the traditional Rolfing series. Nothing against Rolfing. I still became a Rolfer and helped a lot of people. But you got to be careful about decompensating people. And when you get someone's pelvis to rock when they walk, you've decompensated their sexual relationship to the world. And either they're going to love it, or maybe they'll go home and their spouse will be like, where have you been all my life? And they may also be like, who are you? I'm not ready for this. And so a person will go back to their pattern because, you know, or they might not be able to go to the pattern, but back to the pattern, and they get divorced, you know. So this happens too. Like when, in other words, if you explore movement and it breaks down your social, it'll break down your social structures, and they'll either join you or leave you.
Where does that take you then beyond individual relationships when you think about movement, when you think about fascia connection into social structures? I know you're interested in how not to just look at it as an individual human or a human to the next human, but you've got quite a global village concept.
Yeah, well, I mean, get 100 monkeys on board and the whole thing's going to change, right? So if you dare, you know, to experience the continuity within yourself, for starters, then you might be suspicious that there's continuity in these spaces, and that this, and then you want to understand, as surely as I became curious about the quality of the relationships of this texture to that in my body, I'm very curious about the qualities of the textures of the spaces in between us,
Mm-hmm.
right? In other words, how's our relationship doing? Is it brittle? Is it dry? Is it slippery? Was it slippery and now it's kind of gummy?
Mm-hmm.
Was it gummy and now it's slippery again? How wonderful. And then if I'm noticing the quality of the connection, then I have to know that though there's difference, there's no separation between us. There, in the same way that there's a difference between the texture of my skin and the texture of my liver, but they're in a continuity. They came from the same germ cell. So it gets harder to hate on people who you're connected to, like, right? In other words, if you could just actually admit it, you know.
It does get harder to hate on people you're connected to.
Yeah, you have to, I mean, and that goes all the way. I mean, because we love to hate. You know, we just love to get all riled up and hate people who disagree with us, or hate people who are intolerant. Right? Like,
Yeah.
they're so damn intolerant. Die. You know, like it's like what? Like, how does that work? Like you have to.
Well, I'm not the intolerant one, of course.
Exactly.
I mean, I was
Exactly.
thinking just as you were talking about, well, first of all, the profoundness of this statement, dare to experience the continuity within yourself. I mean, it's a huge, huge statement. But then also just, I was thinking how novel it would be for me to go around throughout the day and sort of describe for myself the quality of the connection to different people from these ideas of, brittle, sticky, slippery, uh, giving, harsh. I mean, how much that could change my perception of the people I came into contact with. I mean, that would just be a lovely practice even for one day for me.
For 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah.
And also, like, we are capacitated in our physiology, in our structure, to feel our environment, to feel the quality of those relationships. That's what our heart does. It projects a scaled magnetic wave pattern around us that is strummed and plucked by our neighbors, by our environment, that we reach out and feel with. We don't pay attention to it in our culture because we're locked in our heads. But if you tried that exercise that you just described from here, you'd have a completely different sense of the qualities of the relationship than if you're doing it from here. Because this perceptual apparatus and mode is the one that sees difference and separates based upon the differences. The mind sees difference and imputes separation on certain programs that it runs, not on every one. If it's directed by the heart, it sees things very differently. But the heart, when it perceives difference, it just appreciates it. How cool is that? Like, instead of, oh, this then goes in this box and this goes in this box. You enjoy the continuity from one texture to another rather than needing to divide, separate, put in boxes, name, label, judge, categorize, and ultimately hate some amount of it.
Thank you. Thanks for that distinction. I think that's an important one, because it would be easy for me to take your idea and run with it more in a mental kind of way than from the heart. So thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, this is a feeler's mode. And movement from the head and movement from feeling are very different kinds of movement too, right? Nothing against ballet.
No, right.
But that's a very conceptual and stylized type of movement that asks the body to fit the concept. My friend Russell Malafont is trained. I met him at the Rolf Institute. We've been friends for over 25 years now, but he's a choreographer, a modern dance choreographer in the UK. And he was a ballet guy. He was in a Royal Ballet. And then he moved into modern dance and Rolfing and capoeira and feeling and learning how to, again, much as I've done with ethics, asking the body, what does it have to say about the moral life? He's asked the body, what does it have to say about movement? Can we follow the body's structure and pattern rather than demanding it fit into a conceptualization of movement? Can we, what is it to move from sensation? That was Emily Conrad as well. Going very deep into organic motility and seeing how that moved the musculoskeletal form. It's very different. Or how do we move differently if we allow the heart to move us versus the head? I'm not poo-pooing the head. I've got a big one and I've been using it for many years. But what's its relationship, to movement? Is it the director? Or is it more of a, observer or a rememberer or something instead of the choreographer?
Right. Well, your talk is in our theme, our track called Embodied Anatomy, and I think also you've gone many different places here with embodiment, but embodied movement. And as you're listing out all these different approaches, of course, we're getting slightly different angles, I guess, or we're dialing in a little bit differently into the potential for human movement, and the Feldenkrais method, of course, dials in another way.
Yeah.
And yet they all have something very unique to offer into the culture, but also they're all very different experiences, and one has to access something quite different within the self if you were to switch between all these modalities. If you were going to be the person who could switch between all these modalities or all these different forms of movement or all these different forms of approaching anatomy, there's like something different you have to access within yourself to do that.
It's very true. I think that's why it's so important to have multiple models, actually, because any given model, you'll only access so much.
Mm.
And if you make a model your dogma or your reality or your truth, well, you're going to have a really small truth. So if you collect a bunch of models, I think you'll have a richer, just like you're saying, just a richer access, a more complex exploration. You'll find out more stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for sharing your model of integral anatomy with us here. I'm wondering if well, actually, I want to stop first and say that we want to encourage people to go out and check out gilhedley.com. Okay, so you have upcoming workshops that people can learn about. They can sign up there to be on a mail list for you and all those things.
More importantly, there's a lot of free stuff there.
There
I'm really
is.
giving stuff away.
Yes,
So
you do give a lot away. Absolutely.
go there for the free stuff.
Go there for the free stuff. And you can do that by just clicking on the link right below this video. So that we've made it easy for you, actually, so you don't have to go away very far. And what's your next book going to be about?
Well, I'm very keen to kind of chapter by chapter sort of reframe our thoughts around certain aspects of the body. So favorite one is fat, you know. So we look at fat. Let's talk about superficial fascia. Oh, then you think about it differently. What kind of language do we use about different aspects of the body, and how might our reframing of our thoughts around certain aspects of the body transform our relationship from a problematic one to an appreciative one? So our culture problematizes the body and then sells us, markets to us solutions for the problem we now found out we have. I want to turn it around and say, oh, actually, that's not a problem. That's the gift of your body. And let me tell you a bit about it, how amazing it is. And then maybe you'll, having built up your inventory of appreciation for it, you'll be less inclined to buy into the problematic story you've been told about it. I'm just saying, don't buy that.
Well, I remember watching your video on superficial fascia or adipose tissue and just really probably finding for the first time like an appreciation for this layer of that we have typically called fat, and particularly for women to have an appreciation for it. So that work's been a big gift, and if you can continue it on in the form of a book that's even more accessible for more people, that's lovely.
That's my hope. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a quote that inspires you that you could maybe share with us?
There's a quote that I've been quoting. I got it from my Rolfing training, and I only learned many years later that it turned out it was a Feldenkrais quote, which was fun and surprising to me because, you know, you don't always know who you're quoting. It must be Einstein who said that. Who said that? You don't know. No, it was Moshe Feldenkrais. And it was, I love this quote. Maybe I'll botch it, but this is how I remember it, that one option is tyranny. Two options make for a dilemma. Three options, we start to have choice. I've thought deeply about that ever since I heard it. I've loved that quote. It's so true. And I think our very freedom lies in our grasping of that quote. Because when we look around us and see one option, we feel constricted. Talk about constricting your movement, or whether our movement is always done repetitively in the same way. One option, that's tyranny and debilitating. and two options, my gosh, I can't tell you how much time I spent in my life seeing two options and frustrated by both of them, and feeling the crux of a dilemma. And then realizing, oh my gosh, I'm actually an option generator. Like, part of the creative process of being a human being is in just making up another option. It was the failure to see more than one or two options is just a failure of creativity in the moment. And if you just get a pencil and a piece of paper and write down more options, and you'll be surprised at how the world opens up. Same goes for movement. If you're doing it the same way, you're in a movement rut. You're tyrannized by your movement. Break out.
That's a great. Those are great words to inspire people and move better, feel better. And I appreciate that very much. I'm glad to have you. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up here?
I'm so appreciative of the chance to visit with you. I'm always fascinated at the different things that come out when I engage with different themes or different interviewers or something, and this was really fun.
Well, good. I'm glad you liked it. I liked it. You're delightful and unique, and I won't call you a gift because you just are what you are, and that's a fabulous thing. Just
Thank you.
I appreciate that a lot, Gil. So I want to thank you all for being here with Move Better, Feel Better. And this is just one talk within the track of embodied anatomy. So I encourage you to check out the others because they're all quite powerful. And I'll also remind you that if you are finding that these are too many talks for you to take advantage of in 48 hours, well, that would mean because you are human. This is too many talks to take advantage of within 48 hours. No human can watch basically up to 3 to 6 talks in 24 hours. Then we have another 3 to 6 talks and then another for 10 days. We never expected you to spend all your time watching talks for 24 hours a day for the next 10 days. So the option that is available for you, first of all, I just recommend you pick out the ones that are important to you. And give yourself a break. We hear this a lot, that people try too hard to take it all in. Pick out the ones that are important to you. And then secondly, if it's really valuable to you and you want to have access to the material so you can spend your time listening at a very luxurious pace, then you might want to get the All Access Pass, and that has special pricing up until the end of the summit. So you want to grab that now. You'll get that off of feldenkrais.summit.com, or you'll get it from all the emails you're getting from us each day that tell you about that day's talks. So just give yourself a break.